I'm Kelly, I'm 31, and my in-laws ruined my wedding, so I didn't tell them about the divorce. If you've ever been through something like this, comment below and subscribe. Right now, I'm sitting in a thrift store armchair. The same one I dragged up 3 flights of stairs by myself when I moved into this apartment. There's a crack in the window that whistles when the wind hits just right. It's quiet. Too quiet sometimes. But peaceful. And peace is something I didn't know I was missing, not until I finally walked away from a marriage I never should have gone through with in the first place. 6 months ago, I wore a $4,800 designer wedding dress that I didn't pick. Walked down a flower-lined aisle in a venue I never liked. Ate a menu planned by someone else. Said vows I barely remember, mostly because I was too numb to feel anything but dread in my gut. Everyone said it was beautiful. Everyone lied. Let me rewind a little. I met Daniel at a mutual friend's birthday party. One of those rooftop events where everyone's trying too hard and nobody knows what to do with their hands. He was the quiet one in the corner, sipping whiskey and reading the back of a wine bottle like it was a novel. I liked that. I was tired of the loud ones. We hit it off. He was soft-spoken, polite. A CPA with a boring job and a calming energy that balanced me out. I worked in advertising, always juggling deadlines and talking too loud. He was predictable. Safe. Our first year was nice. Dinners, movie nights, weekend trips. No big drama, no wild passion either, but I convinced myself that was a good thing. I told myself I was done with the roller coasters and heartaches. I wanted stability. When he proposed after 2 years, I said yes without thinking. He got down on one knee in his parents' backyard, in front of his whole family during his mom's birthday barbecue. That should have been my first red flag. It wasn't romantic. It wasn't even private. It was staged. And his mom cried louder than I did. I remember her clapping her hands together and saying, "We're going to have the wedding of the decade," like it was her engagement. And I laughed. At the time, I thought it was sweet. I had no idea. We were engaged for 16 months. 16 long, suffocating months of meetings, phone calls, family dinners that felt more like interrogations. His mom, Karen, yes, her real name was actually Karen, no joke, took over everything. The wedding planner deferred to her. The florist copied her Pinterest board. The caterer was chosen from a short list she'd used for her daughter's wedding 5 years earlier. When I tried to suggest things like a smaller venue or handwritten vows, she'd smile that thin, fake smile of hers and say, "Oh, sweetie, this is just too big for that kind of thing." Everyone's expecting a real event. Everyone, apparently, meant her bridge club, her Pilates instructor, and some family friends I'd never met who owned a landscaping company in Connecticut. Daniel, for his part, just shrugged. "She means well," he'd say. "She just wants it to be perfect." Perfect for who, though? By the time the guest list hit 280 people, half of whom I didn't even know, I was crying in the shower most mornings. I stopped sleeping. I stopped smiling. My therapist asked me if I felt excited about marrying Daniel, and I couldn't answer. Not because I didn't know, but because I did. I didn't feel excited. I felt trapped, but I kept telling myself it was just stress. Cold feet. That once the wedding was over, we could start our life. That things would calm down. That Daniel would finally stand up for me, except he never did. The week before the wedding, my mom called me crying. She said she felt like a guest at her own daughter's wedding. The rehearsal dinner had been changed to a formal steakhouse because Karen didn't want to risk the Italian restaurant I loved. She said it was too casual and would make the real guests uncomfortable. My mom, who raised me as a single parent, who saved for years for my wedding fund, had been sidelined. Karen even told her she shouldn't wear blue because it might clash with the photos, and I let it all happen. The day of the wedding, I remember looking in the mirror in the bridal suite and not recognizing myself. I had fake lashes glued on by a stranger, extensions I didn't ask for, and a corset so tight I could barely breathe. I looked like a magazine bride. Picture perfect. Dead inside, Daniel didn't even look happy when I walked down the aisle. He looked nervous. Sweaty. Like someone about to give a presentation at work. When we kissed, his lips were cold. At the reception, my mom sat at table 12, behind Karen's cousin's friend who was invited as a courtesy. Daniel's dad gave a speech that didn't mention me at all. Karen cried again, and not because she was emotional, but because the cake had the wrong type of ivory frosting. I wish I was making that up. It was the most beautiful disaster I've ever experienced, and here's the thing no one tells you about getting married like that. The wedding doesn't end when the lights go out. It follows you into the honeymoon, where I cried in the bathroom of our resort in Bali because I couldn't pretend anymore. Into our first apartment, where his mom had the spare key and let herself in just to drop something off. Into every holiday dinner where I was asked to bring a side dish, but never asked how I was doing. 3 months in, I stopped pretending. 6 months in, I left. I packed a suitcase while Daniel was at work and walked out. Left the rings on the counter. No note. No dramatic goodbye. Just gone, and here's the part that makes me smile. I never told his parents. They still think we're happily married. I even send a Christmas card with an old photo every year. Just to keep up the illusion. Just to let them live in the fantasy they forced on me. Petty? Maybe. But after what they stole from me, my voice, my boundaries, my damn wedding, I think they can live in their own delusion for a while. They never saw me anyway. Why should I let them see me now? It wasn't always bad. When I first met Daniel, I thought I'd hit the jackpot. It was a rainy Tuesday night, and I was sitting alone at a bar downtown, waiting for a friend who bailed last minute. I almost left. But then this guy asked if he could sit next to me. Unless someone's taken this spot emotionally, he joked. I laughed. It was dumb, but kind of charming. He bought me a drink, and we talked for hours. About nothing and everything, books, siblings, our favorite takeout orders. He wasn't flashy. He wasn't cocky. He listened. Really listened. And after a string of guys who talked over me or ghosted me after 3 dates, that felt like gold. He texted me the next morning to say he'd had a great time and asked if I wanted to get dinner that weekend. I liked that he wasn't playing games. I liked how easy it felt. For the first 6 months, Daniel was kind. Predictable, in a good way. He remembered my coffee order. Picked me up when my car battery died. Called just to hear my voice. He wasn't passionate, but he was steady. My friends all liked him. My mom adored him. You could build a life with someone like that, she said once. He's safe. And he was. Safe. Steady. Sweet. But now, looking back, I see things I didn't see then. The first time he ever raised his voice to me was over nothing, some joke I made in front of his parents. We'd only been dating a few months, and I thought I was being funny. His mom had made some passive-aggressive comment about how I should brush up on wine pairings before their family dinner, and I replied, well, if I'm gonna marry into a wine cult, I better start studying. Everyone laughed, except Daniel. He was quiet on the drive home. I asked what was wrong, and he said, you embarrassed my mom. I blinked. I was kidding. Doesn't matter. You made her feel stupid. No, I didn't, I said. She was teasing me first. I thought we were joking. He didn't yell, but his jaw clenched the way it always would when he was mad. My mom doesn't like to be made fun of. Just, don't do that again. I should have walked away right then, but I didn't. I apologized. I remember thinking, it's not a big deal. He's just protective of his mom. That's sweet, right? Except, it wasn't. That was the first time I got corrected. But it wouldn't be the last. Little things at first. He didn't like when I wore red lipstick. Said it looked too much. Didn't like when I wore heels around his family. Said it made me look intimidating. Didn't like when I posted selfies. Said it was attention-seeking. And every time, he said it with a soft voice and a concerned face, like he was trying to help me be my best self. It was like slow erosion. So gradual I didn't notice I was disappearing until it was already done, and then there were his parents, Karen and Charles. Their house was like something out of a catalog, pristine, symmetrical, museum-level clean. Not a photo frame out of place. Their throw pillows probably cost more than my rent. Every wall was white. I always felt like I couldn't breathe in there. They were polite. Pleasant. But cold. Karen, especially. She'd compliment me with a smile that never touched her eyes. That's such a fun dress, she'd say, voice high and sweet. Where'd you find something so unique? Or, you have such strong opinions, Daniel needs someone who keeps him on his toes. I never knew if I was being praised or mocked. Probably both. She loved Daniel like he was still her baby. Called him my boy even though he was 32. Brought him soup when he was sick. Picked out his clothes for their family photos. Asked if he was eating enough every time we visited, and Daniel, he ate it up, never set a boundary. Never said, "Mom, we've got it." Never put me first. I remember the first Christmas I spent with them. I brought a homemade pecan pie, my mom's recipe, the one she taught me when I was 12. I was so proud. I spent hours perfecting the crust. Karen took one bite, set down her fork, and said, "Well, that's rustic." I laughed awkwardly. "It's a family recipe." She smiled. "That's sweet. We're more of a tart family, but thank you for bringing something." They had 3 store-bought pies on the buffet. No one touched mine, and Daniel, he didn't say a word, just sipped his wine and asked his dad about the stock market. I should have known then. I remember telling my best friend Liz about it that night. She said, "Kelly, are you sure you want to be with someone who lets his mom treat you like that?" And I said, "It's just pie." But it wasn't. It was the beginning of a pattern. A million tiny dismissals. 1,000 quiet cuts, like when Karen redecorated our apartment while we were on vacation. We'd asked her to house sit. She replaced our couch cushions, rearranged our bookshelves, even bought new curtains because the others were too dark. I was furious. Daniel said she meant well. Or when she threw me a bridal shower with all her friends and none of mine because she couldn't track down everyone's emails in time. I cried in the car afterward. Daniel said, "It's not worth getting upset over. It's just a party." Every time I tried to speak up, I became the dramatic one. Too sensitive. Hard to please. Every time I set a boundary, I was guilt-tripped into erasing it, and still, I stayed, because somewhere inside, I thought maybe I was the problem, maybe I was too picky, too headstrong, too stubborn. I started editing myself, stopped talking about politics around his parents, swapped out my funky earrings for pearls, practiced smiling through gritted teeth. I remember one night, 6 months before the wedding, I told Daniel I wanted to elope. We were lying in bed, and I said, "Let's skip the whole thing. Just you and me on a beach somewhere." He was quiet for a moment, then said, "My mom would be devastated." "And what about you?" I asked. He didn't answer. I guess that was the answer. By then, the wedding had taken on a life of its own. Karen had booked a luxury venue, chosen a string quartet, ordered personalized cocktail napkins with our initials. People always say you should feel excited when you're planning your wedding. I felt like I was drowning in a dress 2 sizes too small. The invitations went out. The deposits were paid, and I kept smiling in photos, telling everyone how happy I was, how excited I felt. I was lying, every single time. There was one moment, though, one tiny flash of clarity, that I still think about. It was my bachelorette weekend. My friends surprised me with a beach trip. Nothing fancy, just good drinks, loud laughter, and the kind of realness you can only have with women who've seen you cry in your pajamas at 2 a.m. We were sitting around a bonfire, passing a bottle of cheap rose, and Liz said, "You don't seem happy." I blinked. "What do you mean?" "You smile with your mouth, Kel, but not with your eyes." That stuck with me. It still does, because she was right. I was going through the motions. Checking boxes. Playing a role, bride, fiancé, good daughter-in-law, and somewhere along the way, I stopped being me, but I told myself, just get through the wedding. Then we'll figure it out. Just get through it. Point 1 more performance. Point 1 more lie. Point 1 more day of pretending everything was perfect. They say your wedding day is supposed to be the happiest day of your life. Mine was the day I realized I didn't matter. Not really. Not to Daniel. Not to his parents. Not to the people clinking glasses and taking selfies while I sat alone at the sweetheart table, picking at a meal I didn't choose, wearing shoes that gave me blisters, under chandeliers that cost more than. My car.it started before the ceremony, actually. Way before. The morning of, I got ready in a suite with my mom and 3 of my closest friends. I should have felt excited. I should have been glowing. Instead, I felt like a ghost. The makeup artist kept showing me looks on Pinterest that didn't look anything like me. "We want to soften your features," she said. I didn't know my features needed softening. The hairstylist rolled her eyes when I asked for a braid. "Honey, that's not the vibe." Your mother-in-law wants volume. My mother-in-law. Not me. I looked in the mirror and saw a woman I didn't recognize, and it only got worse. The flowers were wrong, pale, bland arrangements instead of the bold sunflowers I'd asked for. White roses are more elegant, Karen had said. You'll thank me when you see the photos. I didn't. I still haven't. When I stepped into my dress, I didn't feel beautiful. I felt trapped. Like I'd zipped myself into someone else's dream. The photographer arrived late, apologized briefly, then started snapping away like we were a product shoot. Tilt your chin up, he barked. Not that much. Look less tense. I was tense. Because 10 minutes earlier, I'd gotten a text from my maid of honor, my best friend Jess, saying Daniel's mom had insisted on moving the seating chart without asking me. Again, they put my mom at a side table, tucked away with extended relatives, while Karen's friends, people I'd never met, sat front and center near the dance floor. My mom was heartbroken. She didn't say anything, of course. Just smiled and blinked fast like she always does when she's trying not to cry. I wanted to scream, but there wasn't time, because suddenly it was time to walk down the aisle. Everyone stood. The music swelled. I took my dad's arm, and I walked. My legs felt like they weren't mine. My smile felt painted on. I found Daniel's eyes at the altar, and for a split second, I hoped he'd look at me like I was his person, but he didn't. He looked nervous. Not in a good way. In a guilty, twitchy kind of way. The ceremony was short. Too short. The officiant, his family's priest, rushed through it like he had dinner reservations. My vows were trimmed for a time. His were written that morning. When it was over, we kissed. Everyone clapped, and I felt nothing. No joy. No relief. Just this deep, hollow ache. At the reception, everything unraveled. The cake cutting happened earlier than planned because Karen wanted good lighting for photos. The band kept playing songs from her playlist. The DJ even made an announcement. For the mother of the groom's request, we're skipping the bouquet toss. I didn't know that until it happened. Neither did my bridesmaids. I sat there, watching everyone dance and laugh and toast, and realized something awful. I was invisible at my own wedding. Every decision had been made for me. Every moment curated to fit Karen's vision. Every time I tried to speak up, I was overruled. Even Daniel looked more like a guest than a groom, more comfortable around his coworkers than around me. During our first dance, I whispered, "Did you have a good day?" He said, "It went smoothly, didn't it?" That was his takeaway, not how I felt, not whether I was happy, just whether the event went smoothly. That night, in the honeymoon suite, I stood in the bathroom staring at myself in full makeup, false lashes still clinging to my face, and asked out loud, what the hell did I just do? Daniel was already in bed, scrolling through his phone. He didn't even look up. The next day, we flew to Bali. It was supposed to be a dream trip, white sand beaches, couples massages, candlelit dinners. Instead, it was the loneliest I've ever felt. Daniel spent most of the days taking calls for work or checking his fantasy football league. He got annoyed when I asked if we could go sightseeing. Said he was tired. One night, I suggested we really talk, about what marriage was going to look like. He sighed and said, "Can we not do this right now?" I stared at him. Do what? Make everything heavy. That was when I realized he didn't want a marriage. He wanted a partnership that looked good on paper. A life that matched his parents' expectations. A wife who made dinner and stayed pretty and didn't ask too many questions. I was a box checked off, and I had let him do it. But the real betrayal, it came 3 weeks later. We were back home, settling into married life, whatever that meant. I was doing dishes after dinner when Daniel walked in with his phone in his hand. "Hey," he said. "Just a heads up. My mom's stopping by tomorrow to drop off some things." "What things?" "Just some stuff for the house. A new rug. Maybe curtains." My hands froze in the soapy water. "She's redecorating our apartment?" "It's not a big deal. She has good taste." I turned to face him. "Did you tell her she could do that?" "She said she already ordered it." I didn't want to argue. That was it. That was the moment I knew. He wasn't on my side. He never had been. I dried my hands, walked into the bedroom, closed the door, and cried until my chest hurt. Later that week, I found the box. It was in his office closet, a plain black shoebox, tucked under old folders. Inside were cards. Letters, from his ex, dozens of them. Birthday cards. Love notes. Anniversary messages, some dated just months before our engagement. Some, after point one envelope wasn't even opened. I don't know what made me do it. Maybe I needed to be wrong, but I opened it. Inside was a handwritten letter. Danny, I miss you. I know you think marrying her is the safe choice, but we both know what we had was real. I'll wait. I always do. I stood there shaking, the letter in my hand. He wasn't just emotionally unavailable. He was still emotionally entangled with someone else. I confronted him that night, held up the letter and said, "Explain this." He didn't deny it. Didn't cry. Didn't even look surprised. He just said, "It's not what it looks like." I laughed. "Then what is it?" He shrugged. "It's complicated." No apology. No shame, just this hollow detachment that chilled me to the bone. He told me he'd handled it and cut ties. That it was just closure. But the damage was done. I wasn't angry. I was numb. He'd chosen her emotionally. He'd chosen his mom over me practically, and he'd chosen himself always. I slept on the couch that night, and the night after, until one day. I didn't sleep there at all. I packed a duffel bag. Grabbed my laptop, a few essentials, and left. I didn't leave a note. I didn't send a dramatic text. I didn't even call my mom. I just walked out the front door and never looked back. And the craziest part, no one noticed. Not Daniel. Not Karen. Not Charles. Not even his sister, who had called me family just 3 weeks earlier at the bridal shower she planned without asking what I wanted. The silence was deafening, and somehow also freeing, because for the first time in months, I wasn't pretending. I wasn't performing. I wasn't someone's wife or daughter-in-law or project. I was just me, standing alone. Broke. Heartbroken, but honest, and that's where the healing started. The thing about breaking points is you never see them coming. They don't arrive with a big crash or a dramatic moment, like in movies. There's no screaming match, no flying plates, no lightning bolt from the sky. Sometimes they creep up slowly, one paper cut at a time, and then one day, you're sitting in your car outside a Walgreens, holding a bottle of nail polish remover, and you realize you're crying so hard you can't remember how you got there. That was me. 3 weeks after I left Daniel, 3 weeks into crashing on a friend's couch, eating dry cereal for dinner, and avoiding all calls from his side of the family. I broke over nail polish remover. It was a Saturday. I'd planned to go to Target and just exist for a while. Walk the aisles, pretend I still had some version of a normal life. But I couldn't afford Target prices anymore. So I ended up at Walgreens, standing under the buzzing lights, staring at the cheapest bottle I could find, $3.29. And I had $2.90 in my bank account. That was it. That was the moment. Not the wedding. Not the fake vows. Not the unopened letter from his ex. No, it was that bottle. That number. I stood there, frozen, my fingers clutching the bottle so tight I was afraid it'd crack. And I thought, how the hell did I end up here? How did I go from planning a life to counting coins to remove chipped wedding manicure I couldn't afford to get in the first place? I dropped the bottle back on the shelf and left. I didn't even cry until I got to the parking lot. Then I sobbed, big, ugly, heaving sobs that made people walking by glance at me and quickly look away. It wasn't about the money. It was about how small I felt. How invisible. How powerless. I had done everything right. I followed the script. I was the good girlfriend. The agreeable fiancé. The quiet bride, and in return I got erased. That night, I slept in my car, not because I didn't have a place to go. Jess had a pull-out sofa, and she would have welcomed me with wine and blankets. But I couldn't face her. I couldn't face anyone. I needed silence. I needed to sit in the dark and remember who I used to be. I curled up in the back seat with my coat pulled over me, and for the first time since walking out of that apartment, I let the anger in. I stopped trying to be calm. I stopped trying to be nice. I stopped making excuses for Daniel, for Karen, for myself, and I started thinking about all the things I gave up. I used to love painting. Big messy canvases. Oil pastels. The kind of art that stained your skin and made your fingers ache. I hadn't picked up a brush in over a year. Daniel said the apartment was too small for clutter. Karen said paint fumes were toxic. I gave up my favorite Friday night ritual, wine, face masks, and old rom-coms. Daniel preferred documentaries. Said romantic comedies were unrealistic. I stopped watching them. Stopped laughing at my favorite jokes. Stopped curling up with my ugly pajama pants that said, "Let's get cozy" in glitter font. I gave up who I was. And for what? A man who didn't love me the way I needed to be loved. A family who saw me as a placeholder in their curated life. A marriage that looked beautiful in photos and felt like hell behind closed doors. That night, in the stillness of my old Honda, I made a promise to myself. No more pretending. No more shrinking. No more silence. The next morning, I went to a little breakfast diner near the freeway, the kind with sticky menus and bottomless coffee. I looked like hell. My hair was matted, my eyes puffy, mascara smudged like war paint, and the server, a woman in her 50s with laugh lines and no-nonsense energy, looked me over once and just said, "Bad night." I nodded. She poured my coffee, slid me a plate of toast before I even ordered, and said, "Honey, eat. Cry if you need to." We've all been there. It broke something open in me, not the crying part. The "we've all been there" part, because up until that point, I felt like I was the only woman in the world who'd let this happen. Who got swallowed up by a man and a family and a lie. But I wasn't, and maybe, just maybe, I wasn't broken. Maybe I was just waking up. I stayed at the diner for 2 hours, wrote in my journal for the first time in months. Just brain vomit. No structure. No editing. Just rage, grief, shame, guilt, all of it, pouring out of me like poison. And then I wrote a list of every time I bit my tongue when I should have spoken, every time I said, "It's okay," when it wasn't, every time I smiled when I wanted to scream. The list was long, but by the end of it, I felt lighter, not healed. Not whole, but clear. I went back to Jess's apartment that afternoon. She opened the door in sweatpants, holding a slice of pizza, and just hugged me like I'd come back from war. I told her everything. The ex-girlfriend's letter. The shoebox. The complete emotional abandonment. She didn't say, "I told you so." She just said, "You're out." That's all that matters. And then she poured me wine and queued up a marathon of cheesy rom-coms and refused to let me apologize for the crying or the silence or the mess I'd become. That's what real love looks like. Not curated. Not conditional. Not dictated by matching napkins or family name. Real love shows up with pizza and wine and listens. Over the next few weeks, I started piecing myself back together. Tiny steps. I bought a new toothbrush. A new set of sheets. Opened a new bank account under my name only. I moved into a tiny studio apartment with creaky floors and yellow walls and a view of a dumpster. It was perfect because it was mine. I hung my old paintings again. The ones Daniel called juvenile. I started painting again too. Nothing fancy. Just color on canvas. Emotion without permission. And one day, I picked up a pair of red lipstick, the exact shade he once said was too much. I wore it to the grocery store, then to therapy, then to brunch. Each time, I walked a little taller. People noticed. One morning, Karen called. I didn't answer. She left a voicemail. Something about a family dinner and a charity event, and how Daniel had been quiet lately. I listened, then deleted it. She didn't even know we were separated, because I never told them. Not a word, not an email, not a single text. They still think we're together. Still post anniversary shout-outs on Facebook. Still send Christmas cards addressed to Mr. and Mrs., and I let them. Because for once, the silence serves me. Let them live in their curated fantasy. Let them keep sipping wine at garden parties. Believing their son married the perfect wife. I'm not angry anymore. Not really. Just done. Done. Explaining. Done justifying. Done performing. And somewhere in the middle of all that, somewhere between the red lipstick and the crumbling bank account and the terrible studio apartment, I found her again, the girl who painted barefoot. The woman who laughs too loud. The me I thought I lost. She's still here, and she's not going anywhere this time. People always imagine revenge as this fiery, cinematic thing. Screaming matches, shattered glass, dramatic walkouts with violins playing in the background. Mine wasn't like that. Mine was slow. Quiet. Surgical.it started with a Facebook post, not a rant. Not a breakup announcement. Just a photo.me, smiling in my new apartment. Hair loose, lips painted crimson. No ring on my finger. No tags. No explanation. Just a caption. Starting fresh. I posted it on a Monday. By Wednesday, Karen had called 4 times. Left 2 voicemails. Kelly, darling, are you alright? Daniel hasn't said anything. We saw your photo, it looked different. Just checking in. And Daniel? Silent. I listened to the voicemails with a glass of wine in one hand and my phone in the other. I didn't return them. I didn't block her either. Let them spin. Let the doubt grow. The truth is, I didn't want them to know everything. Not yet. They didn't deserve the closure. They didn't get to hear my pain or my healing journey or what it felt like to sleep alone in a bed without having to worry if I was being watched or judged or minimized. Instead, I focused on rebuilding and quietly collecting receipts. See, I never planned to expose Daniel. I wasn't looking to destroy his life, but if I was going to rewrite mine, I needed to start from the ground up, and that meant facing everything I'd avoided. I pulled out the wedding folder I'd shoved in a drawer weeks ago. The contracts. The bills. The absurd $8,000 flower invoice that Karen had taken care of, but later charged to our joint credit card. I opened every email. Read every invoice. And slowly, I began untangling myself from the disaster they called a marriage. Step 1 was closing our joint account. I did it on a rainy Thursday, standing in line at the bank with a book under my arm and my heart hammering in my chest. The banker raised an eyebrow. Are you sure you want to remove yourself from this account? Yes, I said. I'm sure. She nodded and printed the paper's .1 signature. Done. Daniel would get a notification. Let him deal with that. Step 2, lawyer up. I didn't have money for some big-shot divorce attorney, but a friend connected me with a legal aid office, and they paired me with a woman named Tasha. She wore combat boots to our first meeting. Tasha didn't smile much, but she listened. Really listened. After I explained everything, the rushed wedding, the financial mess, the emotional manipulation, she just sat back and said, "You have grounds." For what? Annulment. Or a clean, uncontested divorce. Depends on what you want. I didn't want his money. Didn't want alimony. Didn't want the couch or the Le Creuset set his aunt gifted us. I just wanted out. So Tasha drafted the papers. All Daniel had to do was sign. We mailed them to his office, the only address I knew he'd actually check. And then I waited. A week passed. Then 2. No response. But I knew he got them because Karen posted a family photo on Instagram, a 4th of July barbecue, complete with patriotic napkins and a proud to be a Powell cake. And Daniel looked like someone punched him behind the eyes. I zoomed in. No ring, interesting, still no call. No text. Nothing. So I made my next move. I showed up at his office. Now before you picture me storming in with mascara tears and a scream lodged in my throat. Don't. I wore a white blouse, black jeans, and red heels. My hair was curled. My makeup flawless. I looked like a woman who had just signed a modeling contract with a coffee brand. I asked the receptionist for Daniel. She gave me a polite, tight-lipped smile and said, "He's in a meeting." I said, "That's fine. I'll wait." And I did. For 43 minutes. When he finally walked out, he froze. Kelly. Daniel. He looked tired. His suit was wrinkled. His tie too loose. I smiled. Got a minute? He hesitated. We can talk in here. We went into a glass-walled meeting room. He closed the door. I laid the envelope on the table. You got these 2 weeks ago. He stared at the papers like they were written in a language he'd never seen. I wasn't sure what to say. You don't need to say anything, I said. Just sign them. He sat down. Is this really what you want? I laughed. Now you care what I want? He flinched. Look, I know I messed up, he said. But this feels rushed. Daniel, I said, my voice steady, we were never married. Not really. Your mom planned it. Your dad paid for it. I was just the placeholder. He opened his mouth, but I cut him off, and don't say you didn't know. You watched it happen. Every time they steamrolled me, you watched. I tried to keep the peace, you kept their peace. Never mind. Silence. Then I added, I don't hate you. I don't even really blame you anymore. But I won't stay chained to a life I didn't choose. He didn't argue. He just picked up the pen and signed, and that was it. Tasha filed the papers the next morning. It would be finalized in 30 days. No drama. No press. No amicable split statements. Just silence. The freedom was deafening, but it wasn't over. Not quite, because Karen still thought we were fine. Still sending emails about Christmas plans. Still CCNG me on funny articles Daniel might like. Still inviting me to charity events like I was a show dog on a leash. I gave her a gift. A beautifully wrapped, perfectly timed, elegantly executed gift. I RSVP'd yes to her summer fundraiser. It was a vineyard gala. The kind of event with string quartets and passed hors d'oeuvres and name tags in gold foil. I wore a floor-length emerald green dress with a slit up to my hip and heels that could kill a man if I kicked hard enough. Karen saw me across the lawn and smiled like nothing was wrong. Kelly, you look radiant, she trilled. Where's Daniel? I sipped my wine and said, oh, I wouldn't know. Her smile faltered. He didn't come with you? I leaned in, voice low. Karen, we're not together. Her face turned, like milk curdling. What? I straightened. I left him 2 months ago. You didn't know. She blinked. But why didn't you say, oh, I figured you wouldn't care. You never really saw me anyway. Then I smiled. Softly. Sweetly. Deadly. Enjoy your event. And I walked away. I didn't stay for the toast. Didn't linger for awkward explanations. I drove home barefoot, wind in my hair, music blasting. That night, she called. Twice. Left a voicemail. Kelly. We're shocked. We had no idea. Is there anything we can do? I wish you'd told us. I deleted it because there was nothing left to say. They had their wedding. They had their illusion. Now I had my freedom, and I was just getting started. After that vineyard fundraiser, I thought I'd feel satisfied. I thought walking away with my head held high, leaving Karen to stew in her shock, would be enough. It wasn't. Because a week later, the calls started. First, it was Daniel. Blocked number. I let it go to voicemail. Then he tried texting, just one word at first. Please. Then more. Can we talk? Just once. I need to explain. Explain what? How he erased me. How he let his family rewrite my entire identity and stood by smiling. How he held on to letters from a woman he almost chose instead. No, you don't get to beg for closure after denying someone a voice. I didn't answer, but I watched. And what I saw was the start of a slow, delicious unraveling. It started with a social media post, Daniel's cousin, Mallory, sharing a group photo from the fundraiser. I was tagged, looking like a goddess in green. Daniel wasn't in it. The comments were, interesting. Where's Daniel? You two are usually attached at the hip. Kelly, you look stunning. Hope all is well. Yellow heart. You and Daniel okay? Haven't seen you together lately. I didn't reply to any of them. Karen, however, did. She commented, they're taking space. Private matter. Please respect our family during this time. I screenshotted it. She wasn't denying the separation anymore, just trying to control the narrative. Classic Karen. But the cracks were starting to show. I got an email from her 3 days later. Formal tone. Passive-aggressive elegance in every word. Kelly, we're deeply saddened to learn that you and Daniel are going through a rough patch. While we understand your desire for space, we hope this isn't the final word. Family is about working through challenges, not walking away. If you ever wish to talk as a daughter, my door is open. Warmly, Karen and I stared at it for a long time. Then I deleted it, because I was never her daughter. I was her project. Her showpiece. Her trophy bride. And now that I'd stepped off the pedestal, she didn't know what to do with me. But here's the thing about narcissists like Karen. They don't collapse all at once. They unravel in layers. Slowly. Messily, and I was ready for every second of it. Meanwhile, Daniel's life started cracking. One of Jess's friends, she worked in HR at the firm where Daniel did financial consulting, told me things were getting tense. His performance had dropped. He was showing up late. Disengaged. He was supposed to lead a pitch presentation for a major client. Didn't show. Just emailed the deck and ghosted. When HR followed up, he said he was dealing with personal issues. I could have warned them. Daniel didn't know how to handle discomfort. He avoided conflict like it was poison. He was raised to believe emotions were weaknesses, boundaries were rude, and appearances were everything. So when his picture-perfect marriage imploded and I didn't play my part, when I didn't beg, or cry, or crawl back, he didn't know what to do, and Karen, oh, she was scrambling. The silence was killing her. Her whole life revolved around control. Knowing who was where, what was happening, how it all looked from the outside. So I gave her a taste of her own chaos. I started posting again, not passive-aggressively, not dramatically, just living. Photos of brunch with Jess. A behind-the-scenes look at my first painting show at a local co-op gallery. A time-lapse video of me repainting my apartment walls from beige to this warm, stormy blue I'd always loved. The color Daniel once said was too moody. Every post, a quiet middle finger. Every caption, a reclaiming of my own voice. One photo in particular caught traction. Me standing on a rooftop at golden hour, laughing into the breeze, red lipstick, oversized sunglasses. The skyline behind me glowing. I didn't tag anyone. Didn't say anything dramatic, just a quote. The most dangerous woman is the one who rebuilds herself. Over 300 likes. A handful of shares. Two mutual friends messaged me asking if I was okay. One of Daniel's old coworkers commented, "Glad to see you shining again. Some people never deserved your light." I smiled so hard my cheeks hurt, but what really made my week, 2 days later, I got an email from a wedding photographer, not mine, the one Daniel and Karen hired without asking me. The one who posted our wedding album on their website for promotion. The subject line read, "Client Privacy Adjustment Request." Apparently, someone had contacted them, asking to remove the photos due to personal hardship. The photographer wanted to confirm if I agreed. I wrote back, "Absolutely. Please take them down," and they did. Our wedding, the day that never really belonged to me, was finally erased from public record. It felt like burning an old costume, and then came the cherry on top. I got a message from Daniel's ex. Yeah, that ex, the one from the shoebox. The letters. The betrayal. It was short. No greeting. No explanation, just, "I didn't know he went through with it. I didn't know he hurt you like that. He made it sound like you were the cold one. I was stupid. You didn't deserve that. I'm sorry. I didn't respond." She wasn't the villain in this story, not the main one anyway, but I didn't need her guilt. Didn't need her sympathy, because by now I was living in something far better than revenge. I was living in truth. And people were starting to notice. Karen's mutuals started unfollowing her online. Daniel's name got dropped from the guest list of a gala he used to co-chair. Friends who once told me I was lucky to marry into that family were now reaching out to say, I always felt something was off. I didn't need them to validate me, but damn, it felt good to be seen, especially by the women in my life, because when you claw your way out of a toxic marriage, there's this sisterhood that rallies around you, even if you don't know them. Strangers in comment sections. Coworkers who quietly slip you their lawyer's number. Your barista giving you a free muffin because she had one of those too. Every act felt like a brick. A step. A hand pulling me upward, and the higher I climbed, the more I saw it. Daniel was shrinking, not just professionally. As a person. He wasn't built to stand alone. He needed an audience. A script. Applause, and without me, without the compliant, polished, soft-spoken wife Karen trained him to want. He didn't know how to function. He started texting again, every few days, never angry. Always sad, like this one. I still can't believe how fast everything changed. I keep thinking maybe we rushed it. Or this, I miss you. Not the wedding. Not the house. You. The way you used to laugh at dumb movies. The way you used to tuck your leg under you when you sat on the couch. I didn't reply, because that man never loved me. He loved the woman he imagined I'd become, and once I stopped pretending, he stopped seeing me. That wasn't love, that was projection. Control, and I wasn't playing that role anymore. The final straw, he emailed Tasha, tried to adjust the divorce terms, wanted to split our furniture, claimed we should close out respectfully. Tasha sent him a 3-line response. Mr. Powell, per the agreement signed on date, the matter is closed. Any further attempts to reopen discussion will be considered harassment. Do not contact my client again. Regards, Tasha. In God, I love her, and that was it.no. More texts. No more calls. Just quiet. Daniel had lost control of the story, and for someone like him, someone raised to believe control was love, that was the ultimate defeat. I didn't need to ruin his life. He did that on his own. All I had to do was stop pretending to belong in it.by the end of summer. The divorce was finalized. No headlines. No messy court hearings. Just a signed set of papers in a manila envelope, mailed to my new address like an overdue bill. I remember the moment I opened it. I sat at the small table in my kitchen, bare feet on cold tile, sun pouring through the half-open blinds, the radio humming softly in the background. I slit the envelope with a butter knife and pulled out the packet like it might bite me. Final decree, just 2 words at the top, but it felt like a trumpet blast inside my chest. It was done. I wasn't married to Daniel Powell anymore. And the world didn't end. In fact, it felt like the world was just beginning. But as peaceful as that moment was, the storm hadn't passed, because while I was busy healing, building my new life, rediscovering myself, Karen was busy plotting a different kind of ending. She couldn't stand the silence, the unanswered calls, the photo posts with me smiling. The realization that she had zero control over the woman she once molded like a wedding cake topper, and she did what people like Karen always do when they lose power. She spun the story. It started small. A comment here. A whisper there. She just changed after the wedding, she said to a mutual friend at brunch. I think she was overwhelmed. She told one of Daniel's coworkers. Not everyone is ready for that kind of commitment. She had some emotional instability, she told her yoga group, voice lowered in fake concern. Daniel did his best. I heard about it from Jess first. Then from an old college friend who bumped into Karen at a fundraiser. Then from a girl I barely knew from a book club I left 2 years ago. She's implying you had a breakdown, my friend said. I laughed. I actually laughed, because that's how desperate Karen was. She couldn't let me go quietly, so she tried to rewrite me as the unstable one. The flaky one. The runaway bride who couldn't handle being married to a good man from a good family. Classic. At first, I ignored it. I figured people would see through her. That the truth would rise on its own, the way it always does. But then, she went further. She started reaching out to my contacts. A client I worked with at the agency emailed me. Karen Powell called me. Said she was checking on you. Wanted to know if you were still doing reliable work. It was weird. Then another. And another. I finally confronted her. On a Tuesday afternoon. I dressed with intention. Black slacks, a crisp button-up, red lipstick. The kind of outfit that said, I am not yours. I drove to her house. Rang the doorbell once. She opened the door in pearls and pastels, as if she'd just stepped out of a Nancy Meyers film. Kelly, she said, eyes wide. What a surprise. Let's not pretend, I said. You've been calling people. Talking behind my back. Spreading stories. She blinked. I don't know what you mean. I stepped inside. Uninvited. Unapologetic. You're slandering me, I said. And it ends today. She shut the door slowly. Kelly, please no, I said. You don't get to play innocent. You controlled my wedding. You erased my mother from it. You designed every detail of a life that was never yours to manage. And when I walked away, when I finally stopped performing, you couldn't handle it. Her mouth opened, but I kept going. You didn't care about me. You cared about appearances. You didn't love me, you loved the idea of me. The woman who made your family look good. I paused, looked her straight in the eye, but that woman doesn't exist anymore. Karen's face changed. The performative grief dropped. What stared back was something cold and sharp. You humiliated my son, she said. No, I said. He humiliated himself. He betrayed me. He ignored me. He sat silent while you tore me apart. I protected him, she snapped. From a marriage you were never strong enough to maintain. I took a breath. You didn't protect him. You enabled him. You gave him a model of love that was conditional, performative, and hollow. And he carried that into our marriage. We stood there in the quiet foyer. 2 women with nothing left to hide. I will not let you ruin my name, I said calmly. You will stop contacting my professional circle. You will stop spreading rumors. And if you don't, I will sue. Karen's eyes narrowed. You wouldn't dare. I pulled a folded piece of paper from my purse, a draft of a cease and desist letter Tasha wrote for me. I already have. I handed it to her. Walked out without another word. The next day, the gossip stopped. I don't know if it was fear of a lawsuit or the shock of seeing me take back my power, but it worked, and just when I thought the chapter was closed, life handed me one last gift. A gala. Not just any gala, the Gala.an annual nonprofit fundraiser Daniel and I were once supposed to co-host. He'd backed out after our split, and they'd quietly replaced him. But my name was still on the committee list. Someone forgot to remove it. I debated going. Jess said, you don't have to prove anything. And she was right, but it wasn't about proving anything. It was about finishing something. So I bought a dress, emerald green again. A callback, but this one was different. Sleek, structured, powerful. No soft curls. No gentle pastels. I wore a high ponytail, bold eyeliner, and a gold cuff that caught the light every time I moved. When I walked into the ballroom, every head turned, including Daniel's. He was standing near the open bar, suit too tight around the middle. Eyes slightly sunken. He looked tired. Smaller. He saw me. And for a moment, I saw it all in his face: regret, recognition. A slow, aching grief for the woman he never really knew, and now never would. He walked toward me. Kelly, he said. I raised my glass. Daniel, you look amazing. I know. He hesitated. I've been thinking about. I haven't, I said. Silence. Then I smiled. I hope you're well. I truly do. But I'm not yours anymore. And I never really was. Then I turned, found my table, sat beside people who valued me for who I was, not for who I could perform as. That night I danced, with friends, with strangers, with myself, and in the middle of that glittering ballroom, under lights that once felt suffocating, I felt something new, not anger, not bitterness, but peace, because the truth was out, the roles were destroyed, and I was finally fully free. The morning after the gala, I woke up to a phone full of messages. Half were from people who had been at the event. The other half were from people who hadn't, but had clearly heard what happened there. Apparently, when you walk into a room like A Woman Reborn, it makes waves. People noticed. Some were subtle. Didn't know you were back on the scene. Good to see you glowing. Hope you're open to freelance work again. Let's talk soon. Others were not. Girl. That dress. That energy. That exit. I've never seen someone leave a man's presence so calmly it looked like a murder. Even my old high school English teacher messaged me. Proud of you, Kelly. Proud doesn't even cover it. But the one message I didn't expect, it came from Daniel's sister, Stephanie. We weren't close. She always seemed like the quieter Powell, the only one who didn't look rehearsed at family dinners. She played her role, but I could always tell it didn't fit right. Her message was simple. I saw the gala photos. I know we've never really talked much, but I just want to say I admire you. I wish I'd had half your spine when I needed it. You deserve everything good. I hope you never shrink again. I stared at my screen for a long time. It hit me harder than it should have, because there it was, the quiet confirmation that I wasn't crazy. That the years of minimizing, of being talked over, of being erased, it wasn't just me. It was the system, the legacy, the Powell way, and maybe, just maybe, walking away didn't just free me, maybe it cracked something open for someone else, too. But while I was rediscovering joy, Karen was losing grip. I heard about it secondhand. One of the gala organizers told Jess that Karen tried to have me removed from next year's planning committee. Said it would be inappropriate given my personal situation. They shut her down, completely. Apparently, one of the donors, an older woman named Loretta who'd seen me speak at a post-divorce women's panel, had stepped in and said, Kelly's situation is the reason she should be here. She didn't fall apart. She rebuilt. God bless Loretta, but Karen didn't stop there. She started spreading rumors again, this time more desperate. She only married him for money. She left because she couldn't handle commitment. She's having a breakdown. Posting photos like that, dressing like that, she's clearly spiraling. And maybe the saddest one, she regrets leaving. I didn't defend myself. I didn't need to, because by now people had seen enough. The truth had a glow, a confidence, a gravity that gossip couldn't match. Besides, Karen's grip was slipping. Her annual charity luncheon? Half the guest list didn't show. Her circle? Fractured. Even Daniel's firm, which used to hold Karen in high regard, quietly removed her from a donor spotlight after someone anonymously forwarded them one of her slanderous emails. Yes, it was me. No regrets. The woman who once orchestrated my wedding with military precision was now spiraling, whispering behind closed doors, making herself small in rooms she once owned. And the irony? I didn't hate her, not anymore, because by then, I understood something I hadn't before. Karen was never chasing perfection for perfection's sake. She was terrified of being seen as ordinary, terrified of a life she didn't control, terrified that, beneath the pearls and property and curated social feed, she might be invisible. I knew that fear. I had lived in that fear. I just refused to stay in it. Karen built a glass castle and called it home. I stepped outside and let it shatter behind me, and Daniel, he was quieter now. Less visible. No new posts. No new girlfriend. I heard he took a sabbatical from work, tried therapy, according to Stephanie. I hope he sticks with it. Not for me, not for closure, but because healing matters, even for the people who hurt us. Even for the ones we walked away from, because pain cycles don't end with revenge. They end with someone choosing to be different, and I chose that, every day in small ways. Like turning off my phone during meals. Or saying no when I meant it. Or wearing things that made me feel alive, even if someone else thought they were too loud. I started hosting art nights in my apartment. Women from all over the city, some I barely knew, some I met in the comment section of my posts, would bring wine and snacks, and we'd just create, paint, sketch, cry, laugh. We called it the Unbecoming Club. Because that's what it felt like, unbecoming everything we were told to be: good girls, quiet wives, polished hosts, acceptable daughters-in-law. We peeled it off, layer by layer, and underneath, we found something wilder, softer, more real. One night, after the others had left, Jess looked at me across the table and said, "I don't even recognize the girl from your wedding photos." I smiled. "Good," I said. "She's gone. But the truth is, part of her still lives in me. The girl who wanted to belong. The woman who hoped she could love someone enough to make it work. The wife who smiled in silence because she didn't know she had a voice. She still exists. I just don't let her drive anymore. And on the rare nights when grief returns, because it does, in whispers and flashbacks and sudden pangs, I don't push it away. I sit with her. I let her speak, and then I remind her, you left. You chose yourself. You saved us. That's not failure. That's power. Sometimes, when the world is quiet, like early Sunday mornings, when the light filters through my kitchen window and the city hasn't quite woken up, I sit at my table with a mug of coffee and think about the girl I used to be. I don't judge her anymore. That used to be my instinct after the divorce. I'd look at wedding photos or remember conversations I stayed silent in and feel a white-hot rush of shame, embarrassment, regret. Now I look at her like an old friend, a younger sister who didn't know better, who loved too hard, who hoped too long, who tried so damn earnestly to make something beautiful out of something rotten. She did her best, and when the mask cracked, when the house of mirrors fell apart, she didn't crumble. She walked away, and that's something no one ever taught us how to do, right? They teach us how to hold on, how to keep the peace, how to fold ourselves into whatever shape fits the room, but no one teaches you how to leave, how to unchoose someone, how to reclaim your own damn name, how to peel off the layers of wife and daughter-in-law and respectable woman and find the messy, wild, glorious self underneath. I taught myself every time I said no when it would have been easier to say yes, every time I put on lipstick just for me, every time I deleted a text instead of explaining myself again. That was the lesson, and these days, I'm doing okay. Better than okay. Some days. I've got my own apartment now, not the studio anymore. This one has 2 bedrooms, hardwood floors, and a tiny balcony with just enough space for a chair and a table. I sit out there at night sometimes, wrapped in a blanket, drinking wine from a mason jar and listening to the world hum around me. I paint again. More than ever, actually. My little art nights have grown into something bigger. We started hosting pop-up shows. Women from every walk of life come through those doors: executives, bartenders, stay-at-home moms, retired nurses, all of them craving the same thing: space to be seen. Space to be messy and real and unapologetic. We call it the Unbecoming Collective now. There's merch. There's a website. And there's this sacred knowing, this shared exhale, that happens every time someone walks through the door and realizes, oh, I'm allowed to be whole. Funny how many of us need permission to stop performing. And romance. I'm not rushing it. I dated a little. Had coffee with this sweet guy who ran a bookstore. Hooked up once with a tattooed bartender who made me laugh so hard I snorted. But mostly, I've been dating myself, learning what I like again, rewriting what love means, not flowers and grand gestures and curated proposals in front of an audience. But someone who listens, someone who says, you don't have to make yourself smaller here. Someone who stays even when the mascara's smudged and the anxiety's loud and the morning breath is real. And until I meet someone who fits that, I'm enough. Me. Just me. That's the part no one prepared me for. That after the noise, the wedding, the drama, the silence, the fallout, there would be joy waiting on the other side. Joy in solitude. Joy in new friendships. Joy in the weird freedom of walking into a room and not belonging to anyone. Last week, I got a letter in the mail, not a text. Not an email. An actual letter. It was from Daniel. His handwriting was still the same, neat, careful, like he wanted the words to behave. I almost didn't read it, but I did. It was long. Too long, the kind of apology that's more about the writer than the reader. He said he was sorry, said he was in therapy now, that he was learning about codependency and emotional negligence, that he finally saw how much he let his mother dictate his life. He wrote, "You deserved a partner, not a bystander." And then he said something that stuck with me. He wrote, "You didn't just leave me, Kelly. You left the performance." And I think, maybe that's what scared me most. I folded the letter, put it in a drawer. Didn't cry. Didn't write back, because he was right. I didn't just leave him. I left the act, the role of the cool girl, the supportive wife, the smiling bride. And when I did, the world didn't fall apart. It opened. I ran into Stephanie last week. It was at a local bookstore, the one where I did a reading for an essay I'd published in a women's magazine called Starting Over Doesn't Have to Be Loud. She came up to me after, eyes glassy, and said, "I wish I'd clapped louder for you back then." And I said, "You're clapping now." We hugged. It wasn't weird. We're different women now. And as for Karen, I haven't seen her. I don't expect to, but sometimes, when I walk into a room and hold my head high, I feel her ghost, that cold voice that used to live in my head saying, "Don't be too much." Now I smile and think, watch me, because too much is exactly what I needed to be. Too loud. Too bold. Too unwilling to shrink. And if I had to choose again, if someone handed me a rewind button and said, "Do it over differently," I wouldn't. I'd marry him again, just to get to the part where I leave, where I rise, where I remember what it means to be mine. Because some stories don't end with revenge. They end with reclamation, with a woman sitting on her balcony at midnight, paint under her nails, wind in her hair, and her name finally, beautifully her own. Thank you for taking this journey with Kelly.